How's it going, everybody? This is Dave Meltzer. We're going to be here for the next 2 hours talking pro wrestling. We got Brian Alvarez here. Second hour, we will be joined by Bill Goldberg. First hour, we're going to be mostly taking phone calls. Brian, this was definitely a week that we will remember for the rest of our lives.
I would say so, without question.
Yeah, quite the week.
Have you slept yet?
I slept a couple hours last night after watching the UFC, yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5.
Yeah.
So, oh my God. Yeah, that middle of the week was just, it was very, I don't know what the word is, but, it was just really, I guess emotional, I guess is the word. I mean, it's just so many thoughts. And, those TV shows, especially the Monday show, just unbelievable.
Yeah.
As far as, I don't know, the thing, I kind of want to apologize for last week's show in the sense of not being with it that much, because I just wasn't with it. And, I haven't been with it much this whole week, actually. But, that's the way it goes. I've seen, a lot of, ton of media, stuff on it actually this week, and ranging, a lot of different stuff. And I have noticed that, years ago, when something like this would happen, we would talk about it and we would go kind of like, that people, the fans don't get it, the media doesn't get it. But you know what? I mean, most of the stuff I think everyone kind of knows now.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's good or bad, but it's there was certainly like a lot of letters that we got that were, they sure, there's no secret and they know what's going on. And I think that everyone's kind of mad that, nothing has been done. And now this one was kind of like, the one that was too late.
Yeah, people really figured this one out, and this was a real big one because, even last Sunday, I thought this is probably going to be the biggest one since Owen, and it clearly was. And, Owen fell from the rafters, and it was a major. That's a big story right there. But this was a guy who did not fall from the rafters. He died in a hotel room, and many guys have. And this was the one that everybody picked up on.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of reasons, and I think that with wrestlers and everything, it's like with Owen's death, it's you can go in and we were all just heartbroken when Owen Hart died. But it was also, we knew it was a fluke occurrence, and it's something that will likely never happen again. Whereas this one, it's like, when you look at it, it's like every wrestler knew that with a little bit of bad luck, it could have been them.
Yep.
And it's a real scary one when you're the same age as he is, or a couple of years younger than he is, or a couple of years older than he is, as some of the guys were, and you realize that your own mortality and the profession, and it's a heavy one and it's a hard one to deal with. Just the whole profession, it's a real tough one. Pretty huge news story. On the internet, the Eddie Guerrero was the most, I guess, searched for thing of the entire week. I don't know what that means, but I guess a ton of people were interested. And obviously there was an amazing television show on Monday and again on Friday, and just wow, just some stuff on those shows. The Chris Benoit interview. Oh my God, that
I will never forget in
never.
100 years.
Never, we'll never forget that. And Chris Benoit and some of the others, Dave Bautista for that matter. Not so much the one on Friday night, but the one on Monday night. And, I felt so bad for those guys. Pretty much every wrestler who was not on the tour was at Eddie Guerrero's funeral on Thursday. But, most of those guys, they left right after, they took a bus from the building to the airport, not to the hotel. No, they didn't sleep over in Minneapolis, and took the red eye to either, I guess it was either England or Italy. And then, they started wrestling. They've been wrestling every night. And there's already been one casualty, I guess, which was Nick Dinsmore, who was sent home. And he passed out. He was found passed out in the lobby of a hotel in, I think it was Manchester, England, a couple days ago. and it's a brutal tour.
Yeah. Did you hear anything about Ashley?
I did not. What did you hear?
I heard that she might have gotten hurt.
She might have because she was not at the show yesterday.
Yeah. So.
But I didn't hear.
It has been just the last 5 weeks really for this company have been. I mean, even if you take the Eddie situation out of the equation, it was still just the worst 5 weeks, and you add Eddie on top of that, and it's incredible.
Yeah. Well, I don't even know where else to go from here. But did you watch the UFC last night?
I did watch the UFC, and I read your report.
There was one horrible fight last night.
I laughed so hard because earlier on you'd written that what's a few more days with no sleep, and then you saw the fight, the legendary fight, which I will never forget as long as I live. That was so bad that Joe Rogan just
Joe Rogan was great though.
He saved the show.
Oh my God! I mean,
commentary.
I was just cracking up. I mean, he didn't make any bones about how bad it was.
Oh yeah.
And neither did the crowd chanting "Go home, go home."
Yeah.
Wow, go home. I always thought that was a pro wrestling term.
I know, and that's something you hear like on an indie show, like Nigel McGuinness, "Go to the finish." Here was a UFC fan base chanting "Go home."
Yeah.
And, I thought clearly you men did not watch Ultimate Fighter in Dana's speech because you'd at least be trying. You'd at least be pretending that you're swinging. But yeah, and if you survived that one, if you didn't fall asleep during that fight, you are a man.
Yeah. Yeah, especially since I was watching the replay show.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
Late at night. Well, I had to watch, that was a brutal knockout. In hindsight, Nate Corey was completely out of his league against Rich Franklin.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, geez, wow. What other stuff? New Japan was purchased.
Yeah.
By the Ukes video game company, which we'll see what happens there. And then they announced a card for the Tokyo Dome, which is just so scary bad. So that wasn't, I don't know if that was so great. WWE, I guess tomorrow night we're going to get back to a normal wrestling show or somewhat of a normal wrestling show. I'll tell you what, boy, that Eddie Guerrero was, obviously the heart and soul of SmackDown, and that's going to be a hard show. It really hadn't been an easy show to watch for a while now.
No. And
now it's just going to be, a lot harder. And it was amazing. There's so many amazing things. From, besides the Minneapolis connection, but in the UPN special that they did, and they had all of that footage because they did that TV special on him. And then, they basically, most of those clips and videos and everything, that's all stuff out of the TV special and the DVD that they did. But, it was just amazing, because except for the top guys, and not even all the top guys, they wouldn't have, anything like that of almost, except for, maybe like Austin and who else? Because, as far as like the family stuff and everything, I don't even think they had that would have that for him. I know with Benoit they had to have some of it, but not, like his growing up stuff. But, they had so much stuff with the kids and everything. And, oh, my God, what?
I think that one of the comments that a lot of people made on Monday that was so accurate was they were talking about how Eddie wore all of his emotions on his face. And you always knew really how he was feeling. And you knew so much about his life. You knew so much about his history, his family. The times that he went into a crowd after a fan because he let the temper get the best of him. He wasn't a guy that hid emotions. He let all of his emotions out. And I think that that's why this one, so many fans who never in their lives had met Eddie Guerrero, this hit them so hard because this was a guy that they knew so much about that it was like he was their friend. More so than really any other wrestler. I think that this was just, because I remember, like, Sunday I was just thinking, gosh, this is a killer.
Yeah, it was like, for me, I was personally closer with Brian Pillman than with Eddie Guerrero. But, it was I remember the week when Brian Pillman died, and it was the same week, or the week when Bruiser Brody died, and Owen Hart, some of them, it's just like this, just, between that and the knowledge that, that this one, I mean, I knew that there was going to be just a lot of media stuff. There's just a lot, the questions, the questions that come from this death are right at the heart and the fabric of what is professional wrestling. It's like, what caused his death were all of those things that every wrestler does. I mean,
it's pro wrestling.
It's pro wrestling. Yeah.
And I mean, I was looking at the debates on the internet, and I mean, the simple fact is there is no easy answer to all of this, because if there was, there wouldn't be these problems.
But this is a very hard one to rationalize that for our entertainment and for the business and making money and this, the human cost all of a sudden, I mean, it's always been too high, but it's this thing where it's really, shoved in your face that, what he did to make his living and the injuries that he had and the pain that he was in and, the whole thing of growing up and being so frickin' talented, but growing up in that, in that late 80s, especially, I mean, he started his career in Mexico, but he actually grew up in El Paso. So he was, he started as a Mexican wrestler, so to speak, but he was an American and a great, great wrestler from, I mean, I can't remember, exactly how, I mean, I heard about Eddie Guerrero, when he was 19 years old. So that's 1987. I mean, I know, because I remember 19-year-old Eddie Guerrero was going to be the best of the Guerreros, which is incredible praise, because Chavo Guerrero was a great wrestler, and Gory, was before my time, but I mean, I knew the legend of Gory Guerrero. I saw Gory Guerrero wrestle myself, but it was past his prime, but I mean, I knew the legend of Gory Guerrero is the big shooter in Mexico and the great worker and everything like that, and from day one, the guy had it, and I mean, I remember seeing tapes of him early and seeing him live long before he was ever any kind of a star, and I mean, whatever. I've written stuff. Think about when Worlds Collide in that match that everyone remembers now. With Love Machine and Eddie Guerrero against Octagon and Hijo del Santo, and he did that match on a national pay-per-view that was just an incredible match and did not get WCW or WWE were watching that, and neither of them signed him. I mean. It's just it's just very sad. Let's see. We're going to start with James in Tallahassee. James, what's going on?
Hey, guys. You did good last night on the Big Show on Fox News Day.
Oh, please.
They gave you, 2 spots?
Oh, my God. What can I say? I really...
I actually have to ask, how far did you have to drive for?
I didn't drive. They picked me up and drove me up there and drove me back. But, it was San Francisco from San Jose, so it was an hour trip. It was an hour trip
all
each.
I could think during this segment was...
For 10 minutes? Oh.
It wasn't even 10 minutes, was it? I mean, I thought that I blinked my eye and it was over. I knew going in that, I didn't know going in, like, I could just tell I was watching the show before I was on, and I could see that, the host, Brett Baer, had no interest in the story.
No.
So it was like, okay, I'm gonna say, I would have never in a million years, brought up, TV ratings, believe me. I mean, I knew what I was going to say and had nothing, and what I said had nothing close to what it was going to be, because I knew that this guy had no interest in what I was going to say. He wasn't going to care. So I just figured that I would just try to talk his language, which was TV ratings.
Oh, yeah.
And he still didn't care, and that was that. What can I say?
Who was the other guy? He was a wrestler.
Dr. Michael Brannon, who wrestled under the name Dr. Red Roberts in the 80s, who's actually very well known in South Florida as a psychiatrist, and he hasn't wrestled in a long, long time, but, that was the other guy. I actually know him a little bit.
Okay, I was just wondering about that, because once they said a wrestler and a doctor, I found that interesting.
Yeah, he got out of wrestling because, he was smart, and, I thought, I was led to believe that we were going to have a discussion of this topic, and it's not a 2-minute topic.
Yeah.
So anyway, I guess I heard Jose Canseco after I left, talked about it as well. But I don't know exactly what he said.
After you went off, I turned it off. I said, I didn't even know you were on. They just said an Eddie Guerrero. They were going to talk about Eddie Guerrero, and I was shocked to see you on there,
Yeah.
They didn't
Jose did talk about it a little bit, but, he got about as much time as you did. And him and the host actually got into an argument.
Yeah, that's what my wife said, because my wife said, you didn't get mad about the time, and it's like, what are you going to do? And he goes, well, Jose Canseco lost his cool.
He did. He was like, they asked him a question. He goes, well, you didn't even let me answer the other question.
Yeah.
And the guy goes, well, this is a new question. They argued back and forth, and finally the host goes, Jose, I've got 10 seconds. And Jose didn't say anything, so they went to the final question, and he got a hell of a lot longer than 10 seconds to talk about his upcoming movie. So,
oh, jeez.
It was, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we went to see Walk the Line today, the Johnny Cash movie, and I couldn't just stop thinking about Eddie Guerrero throughout that whole movie because of the lifestyle that Johnny Cash had at one point with the drugs and the women, and then the fact
we were
that
actually supposed to see that on Friday.
Voice, you know?
I was supposed to see that on Friday night, but somehow that one didn't happen.
But no, but the point was that just thinking about, and also his song, you know, the Nine Inch Nail cover song. There were several like crying moments, many crying moments on both the Raw and the SmackDown.
Yeah, I didn't. You know, I cried so much on Thursday that I didn't think that they were going to get me on Friday. But you know,
were you at the funeral? Or?
Yeah.
Oh my. They had me like what had me more as a Christian was Shawn Michaels' time, which I know probably offends some people, but as a Christian, you know, that's what had me in tears. But then seeing the fans crying in the audience, like the little kids and then the adults and everybody, just the whole scene had me crying. And then seeing people like Benoit and Rey Mysterio and poor Chavo, you know.
Poor not all of them. You know, you got to remember this. There isn't one guy, you know, that this didn't affect. Although, you know, obviously Benoit and Dean Malenko, Rey Mysterio were closer to him. Chavo, of course, as well than others. But geez, I mean, you know, any one of those guys going out there. I mean, just you see Kurt Angle.
I know, and Triple H too, even.
Yeah.
And JBL, who'd always have the face on, you know, and he'd be the constant heel, and he couldn't even keep the face. It was just so sad.
I'll tell you something. At the funeral, I really have to praise JBL at the funeral because you know, it was such a sad situation. He came out and did stand-up comedy basically, and was really funny. And it was at that moment in time, you know, stand-up comedy was probably pretty welcome. I mean, he was really, you know, I mean, you know. There were a lot of people who said a lot of things, but I got to say, like, JBL, I mean, it was, in my mind, and no one will ever see this promo, I'm sure, but it was probably the second best promo I think I ever saw JBL do. I mean, the one that he did in Iraq, that would be the best promo of his life.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, but this was, you know, I mean, I shouldn't even call it a promo. It's not really fair. I mean, and to equate the two with each other is ridiculous, but I just want to say that he really was, he was tremendous. Just funny and
you know, the thing on Thursday when he did his deal, or on Friday on SmackDown, I mean, it was over and I thought, how could you ever boo this man again?
Yeah.
Like, to me, I just watched it and thought, it's impossible.
It's going to be very hard, and especially, you know, it's going to be really weird watching these guys go back to being pro wrestlers this week,
like Angle or Triple H, even, you know.
Yeah, because I mean, it's going to be really hard on those heels, and you know, and Chavo. I mean, you know, obviously Chavo has to be a baby face.
I think they got to push him now, you know.
God, but it's just.
But do it in a smart way.
That's such a tough one. Is all I can say, because it's like, do you? You know, I'm sure at first the people are going to want him pushed, and at the same time, it's like, do you want to? I guess you're you know, one of the things in wrestling, you're handed something, whether you like it or not, and I guess you go with it. But it's just so weird to get a push out of that.
The Hispanic audience out there, they need their hero. You know, the Hispanic is the largest growing segment in the population, you know, and Eddie Guerrero was their hero, so to speak, you know, and they need their hero, and I think Chavo's a talented person, you know, in his matches, he never was given, he was always given those poor gimmicks, you know, the Peppy gimmick or the, you know, whatever White. Crazy gimmick, you know, that's Kerwin White, you know, but I think they could use him, even go crazy as WrestleMania, which is a very predominant Mexican city now, Chicago, you know, or No Way Out, you know, I think they could, I don't know, maybe it's just thinking about the reminiscing of Eddie Guerrero.
We'll see, and that will, you know, become evident over the next couple of weeks, but yeah, you're right, Triple H and JBL. It's going to be hard for a couple of weeks, I think, for them. You know, for any of these guys to be heels. We've seen. I mean, it was, you know, we saw too much humanity. You know, I mean, all week I thought, you know, this is a watershed moment for this industry, but I don't know. I don't know where it goes exactly from here. And especially the guy, I gotta say this, it's like Vince McMahon has to do something.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's too late for this one, but he's going to have to come back and he's going to have to publicly, sometime this week. Last week was not the right week, but sometime this week, he's going to have to come back and he's going to have some policy. He's going to have to talk to some, cardiologists.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going to have to, and think about what he's thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not like, it's not like Vince, you know what I mean? And Vince is a lot older than Eddie.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. Anyway, James, we got to get going because we've got tons of calls.
Let's go. You guys take care and hang in there, all right?
Okay, we're going to go to Jay in Maryland. Jay, what's going on?
Hey, guys, how you doing?
We're doing okay.
Yeah, I first wanted to say, God bless them. I loved them, the day I found out, on Sunday. It sounds a little crazy, but, I loved that. I took some spray paint and I painted Latino heat on my wall, and I would go to sleep and I would wake up and I would go to look over just to see if it was still there, to see if this was just a bad dream, and I just had to break down every time I saw it, and it's just really hard because, I'm 24 and I've been watching since I was about 4 or 5 years old, and, it's like what Brian said earlier, it's like your friend, it's like your family, it hits you hard, and it's so surreal, it has you shaking, you don't know what to do, you have to go on, but you don't want to,
Yeah. You have to go on, and I've been hoping now to find when it gets back to normal, because this wasn't really, you can just go for so long, and you want to have normal back. But yeah, that was such a big void, such a talented guy who was, it was this cruel thing with him, because he really was a nice guy, and more than that, he had the in-ring so great, and then his body turned against him, and from a lot of things, and the bumps, and don't discount that car wreck. You got to remember that he was never supposed to live, let alone walk, let alone wrestle, when he had that car wreck 7 years ago.
I'm sorry for interrupting, but I'm just glad it didn't have anything to do with that chair shot that Superstar Graham was talking about.
Yeah. There was he wasn't the only one, because as the week went on, there were a couple of wrestlers who brought that up to me before the autopsy revealed it was a heart attack. And it was like, geez, that's, because I'm very negative, and I'm not the only one about hard chair shots to the head. I think that they're needless. Do them to the upper back. I mean, they still hurt, but. The chair shots to the head, I mean, even before what happened to Kurt Angle, I never liked it because of the possibilities of concussion, and I just don't think concussion is something that you mess with, because, I've seen what happened, to so many athletes, and Bret Hart, in particular with the concussion, but then also, with Kurt, Kurt Angle ended up needing another neck operation because of a chair shot to the head, so I think that, just when he took it, and it wasn't even a clean one, the way it landed, I was like, God, I know that they wanted to do a concussion angle, so you need a chair shot to the head, but
Put your hands up.
What?
Put your hands up.
I just wish that they just do it in the back and still do a concussion angle, whatever. Just don't do it to the head. So anyway, anything else, Jake? Because we got to head to a break.
Yeah, real quick. I just want to say, God bless his family, just like everyone else. Not just saying that because of Eddie, but he does have a beautiful family.
Yeah, he really does. He really does. Did you hear that commercial for that Slingbox thing?
I was not paying attention. I'm sorry.
Oh my God! They said that you can watch your TV through your computer anywhere in the world.
Wow.
No, so to me, I wasn't thinking. I could. I don't go anywhere. Sometimes, but I always get stuff taped. That's not really a big deal. But I just thought, what if you sent I got one of these things and I sent it to one of my friends in Japan. And he hooked it up, and it's like my TV, except it's in Japan, and hook it up to my computer somehow. If there's a way to do this, I mean, that would just be incredible.
I can see the gears turning in your head.
Oh, it's just incredible.
Yeah?
I'm going to get some friends in Mexico, too.
That's right.
Especially
Mexico these days.
Screw waiting 6 months for those Arena Mexico matches.
Right.
Oh, my God. But, the possibilities are endless.
Do we know what's up with Benoit's contract?
No, but there's no way he's going anywhere. So just get the thought. It's not going to happen.
That was pretty much what I figured. But
I mean, I can't say that 100%. He hasn't said that. I just think that come on now, there's no way.
Yeah, now in particular.
Now there's no way that there's no way they can't let him go.
Yeah.
I mean, no matter what, and they know it. So
what also is going to be interesting as far as when things are really going to hit is I think it's December. Is it December 10th? The next quarterly report.
I'm not sure the date.
It's the 4th or the 10th or something like that. But I'm expecting that's going to be quite the day.
Yeah,
if they don't lose money this quarter, I will be shocked.
It's not so much lose money, but the signs. I mean, they're going to,
Yeah, but I think that. Okay, here's the way I look at it. Last quarter, they should have seen that as a sign, and I suspect that they didn't. Because last quarter, if you would have taken out the ad revenue and such that they're not going to have this quarter, they would have been in the
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And I think that
I guess you're for sure you're right, of course.
Yeah. So and they should have looked at that, and
I'm sure they did. I'm sure they did.
Yeah. So I just think that this next quarter is going to be very interesting because I think when they actually see the red, there's going to be even more panic, particularly after the last 5 weeks, because the last quarterly report, nothing had gone down yet, and in the last 5 weeks, there's UFC head-to-head, there's guys leaving, it's just.
Oh, the whole Taboo Tuesday fiasco.
Everything.
Yeah, not to mention this. I mean, someone's got to ask some questions. Like I said, Vince is going to have to make some form of a statement, and he's going to have to come up with something.
Yeah.
Because to just ignore this, you can't. It can't be ignored. Let's go to Ed in San Antonio. Ed, what's going on?
Hey guys. First off, I want to apologize in case I break down during this phone call. I've still been pretty emotional about it.
Yeah, well, we all have.
Just in case the music starts, I did want to say something in Spanish before I go.
Okay, go ahead.
Let me say what I got to say first. It's just really amazing how everything can change in the blink of an eye. I remember last week I woke up and the first thing I did is I called the show, and I was very excited to maybe have a chance to talk to Bret Hart, and the first thing I hear is you saying that Eddie passed away. I mean, that just totally devastated me. I went into work after the show, and I must have broke down 3 or 4 times crying, and it was that has to be a really sad day in my life. I mean, it's David Von Erich all over again for me.
Yeah.
But this time, I'm a 33-year-old man and not a 13-year-old kid,
Yeah, the David, I was, I lived in near Dallas, in Wichita Falls, actually, when David Von Erich passed away, and that was something, but I think with the David Von Erich one, to me, okay, for my generation of wrestling fan, that was the first one. Do you know what I mean? It's like, like there were a lot that came, Gino Hernandez and people like that came after that, but that was the first one, and it was so, you just, as a wrestling fan, you don't expect it. I think David was 25 when he died. I mean, you just don't expect that, and he was, he was on top, and we watched it on TV every week and saw him, and I knew him a little bit, and that was hard. Obviously, as the years went on, I kept, sometimes it maybe you get numb to it, you get mad about it, but you know what? You really don't. It never. I don't know that it ever gets better. I mean, because I think that it keeps getting worse. And this one, it was what was so bad was not just that it was Eddie Guerrero, and not just that it was the wrestling death for all the reasons that we have seen, but that it was, I don't know, just that there'd been so many, and it hadn't been, it whatever it was, and I'm not saying it could have been prevented, but it hadn't been addressed. It's like we've kind of, I don't want to say, I hate to say this, but the business, has had a million warnings. I guess that's the way I want to say it. It's had a million warnings, and it hasn't heeded those warnings. And, when you don't heed warnings, things like this happen. And nobody wanted this to happen, and it's the worst one in some ways because of who it was and because of what it represented. So, anyway.
Yeah. Well, before I go, let me just say to Eddie, tú eres mi familia. Tu hecho menos. Nunca te olvidaré. Adiós, Eduardo.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dave. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. Let's go to Tony in Saugus, Massachusetts. Tony, what's going on?
Hey, Dave. Hey, Brian. It's a sad week to be a wrestling fan, and one of the things I've been thinking about is an off-season for wrestling. Why can't it be done? Is it all a money issue?
I think that the nature of wrestling being 52 weeks a year programming, it's not, I'll tell you what, I don't think that wrestling needs an off-season. What I do think it needs is, like shifting crews in the sense of, you get, guys will work a couple of weeks on, a couple weeks off. You don't really have to have every star on every television show. You really don't.
And plus, wrestling has such a loyal audience. Right now, it's proven they're going to have the same amount watching every week, pretty much.
Pretty much. And here, yeah, exactly. You don't need, like Triple H was gone for all those months, right? And it's not like all of a sudden people stopped watching wrestling,
right.
Stopped going. There's nobody. The funny thing is the only guys, the only guys who really were so big that they pretty much carried everyone.
Austin.
Austin and Hogan in the 80s.
Yeah, and The Rock.
Okay, but Rock was, with Rock, Rock was really big, but you know what? I mean, it wasn't like he carried the whole company on his back. He was huge. But Hogan, Hogan was Hogan really carried it. And Hogan didn't work a full schedule, and they survived, and they were working. In the Hogan era, they were doing 3 house shows a night, and Hogan wasn't even working a full schedule, and they survived it. So if Hogan could work 125 days a year, let's say, I think that's probably what he was working, in those big years, maybe there's ways that you can, give the guys, 3 weeks on, 2 weeks off.
Right, because they get physically, I mean, you're hurting, you're in cars for long hours, you're on planes for long hours, and you know what you have to rely. Everybody knows what they have to rely on, and and mentally they get burned out. And it's like after their big Super Bowl, WrestleMania, they go and do a Raw, and they keep on going. It's like after you do the football players, they have a Super Bowl, their season ends.
Yeah,
wrestling, they have their Super Bowl, it continues.
Yeah, because the one thing, again, I'm just looking for what, and then again, Mexico, the schedule's even harder, and I don't think that Mexico has the problem that we do, and I'm not even sure as to why. And then
there's something you also have to look at is WCW. There were times when it had a very easy schedule, and there were major problems. And same with ECW.
You're right.
And part of the problem is,
because if you give the guys too much free time, some of the guys, not all of them, maybe not even a majority of them, but some of the guys with too much free time are going to get into more trouble than if they were constantly working. Because again, the schedule that these guys have now, as far as number of dates, if you go back to say like in the 70s in the Carolinas or one of these territories that was on fire, where, they had 2 crews and they were just doing house shows in every little town all the time.
Right.
Those guys, like in that late 70s era, they were working 300 days a year for real with no time off and working twice on Christmas and twice on Sundays and blah, blah, blah.
They were driving all the time, no flights.
Yeah, some flights, but you're right, but mainly driving. Some of the top guys were doing some flying, but they're easy flights. And it was territorial. It wasn't coast to coast or anything like that. And those guys, they drank and they partied as much, if not more. But, again, they didn't have the casualties that this generation has.
I hate to say, I hate to put over a guy, but I think Vince showed that he was a human being when he almost broke down on SmackDown. I
don't want to talk about that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. I just don't say anything bad or good about Vince.
No, you're absolutely right. I read on. You're absolutely right.
No, because but as far as.
But sometimes we don't think he's human because when he appears on regular appearances, he hurts the wrestling business by acting kind of weird. Yeah,
I know. He can be a very bad rep. No, all of them. They were all hurting. There was one guy, and I'm not going to mention his name just now, but. The name I'm sure will come out because everybody was saying it, that I talked to. There was one guy that I couldn't believe, but everyone else, and, everyone else that was, that I've seen, they, what am I going to say? They were all hurting. It's like, I know some people going like, Stephanie or Hunter, this and that from Monday.
I didn't like when, on your site somebody criticized that.
It's like privately, listen, privately people have said things, okay? But you know what, to me, it's like, they were hurt, Stephanie McMahon dealt with him every week. Come on. Triple H, come on.
I think also with Vince McMahon is, I would not ever say that Vince was not in emotional pain when he was doing the promo, but there's something about Vince where he cannot not be Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
And it's not, I mean, it sounds weird. I mean, it's not like he's not hurting, but he just because he cannot get out of the Vince McMahon mode, it can come across like he's being something that he's not.
And Shawn Michaels said in his book that he would like Vince McMahon to show the real side of him that the guys on his crew see behind the scenes and which the public never sees. He'd like Vince to show it.
That's funny because the guys who I talk to, I don't know.
I don't think Vince could show you the real Vince McMahon.
I don't know if there is a real Vince McMahon. And
he cannot show himself in the mirror as soon as he wakes up in the morning, all alone in the bathroom. I'm sure he looks in the mirror and sees pretty much the same Vince that everyone else sees.
I mean, it's like Vince. You know, Vince is not. You know, he's shades of gray like every other person.
Right.
I mean, he's a brilliant promoter. He's got a track record that's excellent. He's made a lot of bad decisions as well. He's done some very cold things. He's done some very, warm-hearted things. You know, it's like anyone, you can't say he's good or he's bad, but, I mean, believe me, obviously Vince is hurting bad on this one.
Yeah, it's the first time he's ever lost a main eventer on his roster.
Well, it's not even that. I don't think that's, I think there will
human.
There will come a day, and it might even be like in the next week or so where he might go, and I guess maybe it even came last week when they were looking at the European tour, and it's like, oh my God, it's like, look at what do we do for SmackDown?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I'm not saying to be cold or to say that Vince is a bad person, but at some point, you do have to think of that as well. And I mean, they didn't cancel the shows. So have these guys on
me that they didn't cancel the European tour. It's like
well, it was a business decision. I don't fault them for that. That was a real big thing.
It's a lot of money.
I mean, it's a lot of money. It was so hard on the guys. Maybe, but it's not one of those things like if they could have said, okay, we're going to postpone everything for like 3 weeks and then go back there. I guarantee you they would. But I don't think that they had that option. I think it was either that, and I don't think that they could walk out on that tour.
And very quickly, before I go, Brian, I don't think they're going to lose money because they got the Shawn Michaels book, they got Jake Roberts, and they got the Bret Hart DVD. That's a lot of money right there. I don't think they're going to lose money.
Yeah, but that's not going to come on this book. That's going to be the next quarter's book.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Okay. We're going to go to Abdul in Colton, California. Abdul, what's going on?
Hey, what's going on? I guess I don't want to sound judgmental, but even though he was sober Eddie was sober for 4 years, but the damage he created could have never been undone. I mean,
everything he did, there were a lot of contributing things I would suspect that played a part in this. But yeah, he, no question that was, likely all part of the big picture.
Right. I saw him a couple weeks prior to that at the Staples Center in L.A. Had a big triple threat match, and I guess maybe it's just me, or I noticed a change in Batista when he was buddies with Eddie for a little bit, and Eddie was helping Batista come out of his shell or something.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's I guess I was just seeing things. Notice I guess also TNA was doing things too in tribute of Eddie as well.
Oh yeah, well those guys, they had to do a pay-per-view that day, which those guys had to do a show too, but I mean those guys. A lot of the guys in the dressing room knew him. Conan, Mike Tenay were they've known him for, years and years, longer than most of the WWE people. And Conan's known him longer than almost anyone. And they all had to go out. But even the ones who didn't know him, everyone respected him. And, it was just like a sucker punch like you wouldn't believe to all those guys. And then had to go out there. And, with WWE, at least they were allowed to kind of talk from the heart. With TNA, they had to and they had to put on a show. And they were allowed to, to do some things and say thank you and all that. But they still had to put on an entertainment event. And for them, in some ways, I think that may have been harder than what the WWE guys had to do. But at least they didn't have to go to Europe right afterwards, though. So that is one difference. Our special guest this week, Bill Goldberg. We got a lot of different things to talk to Bill about, what he's been doing, what he's got coming up. And but probably the first thing to talk to Bill about is what we've been talking about for the entire show. And Bill, obviously, you worked for years in WCW with Eddie Guerrero. And how did you learn about this, and what was your thoughts about how everything went down?
Actually, the guy who runs my website, Ross Foreman, informed me of it. I really don't know too many of the particulars, but just another one bites the dust. Unfortunately, man, he's another one of the guys who was so gracious enough to me in the infancy of my career to pull me aside and just help me whenever I needed help. And he was just a terrific guy in and out of the ring, and his family's definitely going to miss him, and as well as guys like me. So,
I got a question I want to ask you is you were in football for most of your life, high school, then college, then professional football in various leagues, and then you came into professional wrestling. And football's a very tough sport physically. Lots of injuries like professional wrestling. Lots of the same type of emphasis. You got to be big and strong, and in football you got to be fast as well. Is there any reason why you think that this type of thing that seems to happen too often in wrestling really doesn't happen like that in the ranks of football? I mean, what's the difference? Is it the travel? Or there's probably a lot of things. But
it's called the grind, and that has everything to do with it. That's the contributing factor right there. I mean, guys in the NFL, if they're lucky, get to travel eight times a year. I would imagine 9 times a year, playoff stuff like that. They're not on the road 120, 130 days a year, driving from town to town and having to get workouts in, and it's a very, very stressful life, man. I don't know of any other endeavor that you could correctly compare to.
We're talking a little bit about football, the difference with football and wrestling as far as the grind. Bill, another one I wanted to ask, and from an hour standpoint and everything, you've done a couple of movies, of course, Longest Yard, which you did right, which came out right about the last time that we spoke. Oh, I'm losing something here. Anyway, what type of, from an hour standpoint, and I mean, that took a long time to film, but I mean, I guess it wasn't the travel that would be like as a wrestler.
No, it's totally different. Totally different. The grind on a movie set is getting up and being on set at 6 a.m. and having to sit around all day for a 15-minute shot. Like I said, there's nothing in comparison career-wise to being on the road and wrestling, except for being in the circus.
Yeah. And then the circus, you may not, depending on what your role is, but most roles you're not going to have the level of pain I think that you're going to have as a professional wrestler.
Well, there's no question. Unless you're the sword swallower or something.
Yeah, really. Now, you've had a lot going on. And in a couple of weeks, you're doing a television show on Spike. You're filming it, and want to tell everybody a little bit about that?
Well, it's called Joes versus the Pros, man. It's 3 average Joes against 5 supposed sports icons each week. I think it's a 10-episode deal. Myself, Dominique Wilkins, Karl Malone, Jerry Rice, Randy Chastain. The list goes on and on. It's going to be a lot of fun, man. Mainly for me to get out there and compete alongside of some heroes of mine.
Mm-hmm. Now, when's that filming and when does that air?
It is filming in December. Actually, my spot films in December. When it airs, God only knows. Only the powers to be at the Spike TV can tell you that one. Okay, and
how was the feedback and everything from the Automaniac show?
I think it was pretty good. It was quite a stretch for the History Channel to go out on a limb and shoot for a 18 to 35 audience. I think it was a lot of fun. I think we were able to give the fans something quite different than all the other auto shows out there, which was a little bit of informative information. So you never know, man. I'm keeping my fingers crossed for a second season.
As far as professional wrestling, how closely are you following it? And, what are your thoughts as far as, you actually haven't done it now in wow, it's what is it, like a year and a half now?
It's been a year and a half, man. It's been, it seems like it was just yesterday, but...
that last match you're not going to forget.
Yeah, believe me, I already forgot it.
You did?
So the reality is that I probably watched 5 minutes of wrestling since I stepped out of the ring at Madison Square Garden.
Really? Wow.
For me to pass judgment on the state of wrestling would be unfair because I haven't watched it. So,
well, what about the UFC show last night?
Oh, that was a great deal. UFC, man. I am very close to the cuff with a lot of those guys. Randy Couture and I actually were supposed to do a USO tour about 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
I unfortunately got sick and I wasn't able to attend, but we're going to go in March back up to Washington, D.C. with Ken Shamrock and a couple other guys. But, UFC is great, man. It's awesome. UFC and Pride over in Japan, and I'm obviously a huge mixed martial arts fan. I own a gym, a Muay Thai gym in Oceanside, California, too. So it's UFC's great, man. Great TV.
What did you think when Tito, Ken Shamrock, and BJ Penn all returned in the same night?
The original thought that I had was, man, this is turning more like wrestling every day.
Wasn't that, no, seriously, that thing was, Dana White was he was more,
He was Vince McMahon.
He was Vince McMahon, and he had that big smile on his face. He's bringing all the stars back, and, and it was, I tell you what, it was where Dana turned even more into Vince McMahon because the one thing that with Dana White is that, if you crossed him or he didn't like you, it was just like, okay, adios, I'm running the show.
Uh-huh.
And these were the guys, BJ Penn who sued them and Tito who they had the big contract problems with.
Ratings, man, ratings.
He figured it out. They needed more stars this season because they have more TV.
That and they needed storylines.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, like we were talking about this earlier, the idea of a Tito Ortiz and Ken Shamrock together on a television show for all those weeks leading to a fight is probably, the dynamic, and with Dana in the middle, the dynamic is awesome for television.
It's genius.
Yeah.
Absolute genius. Hats off to those guys. That was very smart.
Are you, how close are you to, because you know all of those guys pretty much, right?
Yeah. Tito's a good friend of mine. Like I said, Shamrock was on that USO tour, and I'm actually going to go to the fight to Couture's rematch with Chuck Liddell, I think in February.
Oh, the February 4th show? Yeah. Now, you are also doing something, I just want to bring this up as well, the eBay thing. You're auctioning off some of your things to help basically a family that was from New Orleans has been displaced to where you live, actually. And tell people a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's the Ario family. I think there's 8 or 9 people in the family. They range from probably 6 years old to 80 years old, and they were directly affected by the hurricane. They were all displaced, and through actually my mechanic who takes care of all my cars, I got in touch with this family, and like I said, they live here in Oceanside right now, and we're auctioning off various items from time to time on eBay, and 100% of the proceeds are going to this family. So, it's a very small way that we can help, but it's a way that we can help. So,
can you tell? Is there is it through your website or?
Well, you go to BillGoldberg.com, and I think through the latest news, it'll always show the current auction item up. But God, you can type in Bill Goldberg at eBay, and it'll pop up along with probably 2 million other things. So.
Okay. Now, as far as when we're talking about like mixed martial arts and everything like that, on the recent Pride shows, there've been some killer shows. The Bushido show, and then the show where they had the middleweight tournament and what was it, the Fedor and Mirko Krokop show. What were your thoughts as far as you've been there, you've even worked for them in the past as far as announcing and everything. Tell us a little about the atmosphere of going to Pride, because no one here has ever actually been to a Pride show live.
Pride's totally different. When Joe Rogan said it best, UFC is the mecca of mixed martial arts in the United States. And as far as Japan is concerned and other countries, but who knows how they compare unless you have been there. I have been there, and I got to tell you, man, I co-commentated an event called Dynamite New Year's Eve in Japan, and there were over 100,000 people there. And it was more like watching an event at the L.A. Coliseum as opposed to the MGM Grand. It was an event, produced in grandioso fashion. It was unbelievable. I mean, it's just totally on a different scale. Now, to be on the negative side of Pride and K1, they're going way, way out there as far as matchmaking is concerned, and some of their cards have turned into, they're not even as good as some of the wrestling matches. It's just absolutely brutal, some of the things they're doing. And I take my hat off to the UFC guys because they never did anything like that. So.
Well, they might do Joe Rogan and Wesley Snipes.
Go figure.
It's funny because talking to the people there, you have that debate internally at UFC and every one of these companies that, you have to put on matches that the fans want to see, but then you also do want to produce it as a sport and have, legitimate championships and legitimate contenders, as much as you possibly can. And yet sometimes, now in Japan, they've gone a lot further, with like comedians and things like that. I mean, but, sometimes, like with wrestling and everything, it's like some people are over that, that belie their athletic ability because of who even knows what. Charisma.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty strange why they put some people on the card, but go figure.
When we were talking about UFC just a second ago, Matt Hughes, George St. Pierre, and BJ Penn, when that thing is all said and done, who winds up on top?
Wow. That's kind of a toss-up, man. I mean, it totally depends on what night it is. I want to say Matt Hughes, but St. Pierre is emerging as one of the top guys in that division for sure. And BJ Penn, I mean, we all know how he emerged in the UFC in the beginning, but unfortunately he took kind of a downside turn. But hey, everybody loses. But I'd have to say Matt Hughes, man.
Yeah.
If I had to pick any of them, it'd be Matt.
Yeah, because the one thing with BJ Penn when he was the big underdog against Matt Hughes, that was the one where I think he opened a lot of people's eyes, and I think, I don't think you'll get the same Matt Hughes the second time as far as, not taking him seriously, but, and then, like I said, George St. Pierre, the last couple of fights he's been in, wow, just dominant.
Yeah, he's tough. He is really tough. That fight last night was unbelievable. He showed very good skills, man.
And, going back as far as to the world of pro wrestling and in your days there with WCW,
good old days.
That is the weirdest. When you look back on that, I mean, what are your thoughts? I mean, here you come in as a total unknown, you become a huge star in incredibly fast, and the company is on fire at its peak, like no company had ever been in many ways before that, financially anyway. I mean, WWE got bigger later, and then all of a sudden, I mean, it skyrocketed. I mean, you got in there, 97, it was certainly on the way up, and then 98 was the big year, and then it went down in 99 real bad, and then 2000, it's like a nightmare. I mean, like, you look back at that, what a roller coaster that period was.
No doubt. It was like, it was a hell of an introduction to the business. The best and the worst, all within a short span of time. But I couldn't have asked for a better situation. Being at WCW when they were in the middle of the wars with WWE, and being in the situation I was in with Hogan and Bischoff and the company, it was a great time. The downfall of the company. Once that started, that was a horrible time, but obviously with the good comes the bad. So
now, when the thing was going down, I mean, did you see a certain point where it was like, oh boy?
I think his name was Vince Russo.
Okay, well, that was a scary part. That was a scary part too. I mean, in hindsight, what do you think? Just the whole change in the philosophy of what wrestling was when Russo came in?
Yeah, it was just a whole. When it's not broken, don't fix it.
Yeah.
And when we started bringing people in that didn't know their ass from a hole in the ground, and didn't know anything about the wrestling world, not necessarily speaking about him, but a number of other people who will remain nameless. It was strange. It was like what Vince did to my character, kind of, in a way. Why mess with it, man? It was rolling so good, and just let it continue to build steam.
Going in.
Actually, can I jump in here real quick?
Go ahead,
regarding
Brian.
Vince. I got to ask this question because I've always wanted to know. What were your thoughts when they approached you and said, "We're going to put a wig on you"?
You know what? I wasn't going to do it. My first thought was, no, I don't want to do it. Second thought was, you know what? That's what they want you to say. And third thought was, you know what? If it wasn't with my boy, I wouldn't do it. So that's the reality of it.
And was it sort of that day that you did you figure out very early that this was going to be a problem?
Oh, no question. No, I mean, I knew it from the beginning, but I forecasted. I hoped it wouldn't happen, but I was ready for it.
Now, again, we talked about this before, and it's kind of well known. I mean, you mentioned it before. A lot of the impetus of you getting in there was The Rock, who ended up leaving about after your first match.
Yeah, no doubt. Thanks, man.
So, how did he approach you? Because you were on the sidelines, and I'm of the impression that you weren't necessarily looking, to jump back into the wars at that point in time.
Hey, man, Rock's a very good friend of mine, and I'd do just about anything in the world for him. And it gave me an opportunity to get back out there for the kids who were stopping me on the street, asking me when I was going to get my ass back in the ring and back on TV for them. And a smart guy once told me, and his name was Ernest Miller, that you kind of owe your career the opportunity to go up there and see what happens to it.
Yeah.
And there you have
it. I guess in a sense, would you say that had you never done it, perhaps you would have looked back and gone, well, maybe Vince McMahon could have done something, really great with me, and now at least you know that.
You know what the reality is, man? How much greater could it have been?
Well, he could have done. Seriously though.
No, I mean with my career at WCW, how much greater could it have been? Looking back on it, I mean we all strive to be the best and to get the best matches, to be with the best promotions and have the best opportunity to further our characters as much as possible. But man, hey, beggars can't be choosers, and the reality is, man, when I was on top at when WCW was on top when I was there, it was a wonderful place to be. And it was a wonderful situation, and that's how I should have left the perception of the wrestling world in my head. Unfortunately, I chose to do what I did. And would I do it again? Hell, I'd do it again.
Mm-hmm. We're going to go to Jason, who wants to talk to Bill. Jason, what's going on? Jason.
Hey, Bill, how's it going?
What's up, Jason?
I just had a question on your last match. I was at the Cow Palace when you did the run-in with Eddie Guerrero and helped him win the title. And it was pretty exciting leading up to that match, and I'm wondering what the circumstances were where that match turned out to not be so great, because I remember looking forward to that match and sitting there watching it on pay-per-view, and
it
pretty
sucks,
disappointed.
Man. It was a horrible situation. I mean, with me leaving, Vince knew I was leaving, and right as he got hit with the right cross and me leaving, here comes his boy who leaves. So what? How is the match going to be? I mean, there's sure not going to be a lot of emphasis on the success of the match if the two combatants are leaving your promotion the next day. I mean, there's no money past that night for the promoter. So I mean, why put that match in a situation to where it could be favorable for the fans? Not to mention the fact that myself and and Brock weren't feeling too chipper that evening as far as our last performance there. So, we would have loved to put on an hour shindig for everybody and had a hell of a match. It would have been unbelievable, man. There's no doubt. But when I got in that ring and I looked across and people were booing and his his chin just hit the floor, man, I knew it was a long night.
Yeah.
Did you know Brock Lesnar well at all?
I didn't know him well. But I knew him. You know, I spoke to him, you know, often, and I tried to be. You know what? The fact is that you know, in a situation like that, you got a guy coming up who's very impressionable. You don't want to be one of the other guys telling him what to do. You know, I wanted to let him kind of figure it out on his own and throw my 2 cents in if he asked my opinion, and I just didn't want to be those guys who stir things up that you know, want to lead a guy in a different direction. Did
he ever talk to you at all about football, being that, like, you know, you actually, you know, played in the NFL?
Oh, absolutely. I knew the guys he was training with.
Yeah. I mean, because I mean, he's a fantastic athlete, obviously, to get as far as he did with the limited amount of experience that he had. But I mean, that's a real long shot because of the skill level of I guess inexperience at football.
It's the transition. It's the fact that the speed of the game is unbelievable, and to be a layperson, you know, you cannot just walk in off the street, no matter what type of physical condition you're in, no matter the mentality you have. A sport like basketball can lend itself to someone walking off the street a little bit better than football. It's just there's too much to it. Now, as far as his decision, man, I backed him 1,000%. Man, if he wanted to do that and that was his dream, then more power to him. And hey, man, pat him on the back for making a decision like that, and just doing what he wanted to do.
Brian.
Yeah, I got a question about the movie Santa's Sleigh. When's the first time you saw the finished product, and what'd you think?
I saw it 2 weeks before it came out on Spike, and my first impression was I turned to the director and I said, "Man, that's not as bad as I thought it was going to be."
That's always good.
You know, his reaction wasn't too favorable, but you know, hey, man, the reality is again with this little cliche is that. When you got a 6'4", 280-pound maniacal Jewish killer Santa Claus, what the hell do you expect? You know, I mean, the thing's it's going to be a cult classic. You know, it's one of those tongue-in-cheek little deals. It was never meant to be serious.
Bill, you know, when we were talking about the acting and everything like that. Now, what was your, you know, Brian mentioned Santa's Sleigh. What was your thought the first time you saw the finished product of Longest Yard?
Well, man, I was very excited. I thought it was great. You know, the fact is, we told everybody that we weren't trying to remake the original movie. We're just trying to put another Longest Yard out there for another generation of kids. It was just a totally different movie. So I thought it was killer, man.
Yeah, it ended up doing tremendous at the box office.
Yeah, I think it did really well, man. I believe that DVD is going to do even better.
Yeah.
What other projects are you working on?
Well, you know, like I said, I've got these the Joes versus the Pros, and then hopefully, like I said, the History Channel's got the second season of Automaniac coming out. And, you know, just did an audition last week for something pretty big. So when that happens, and if that happens, you'll be the first one to know, man. So,
okay.
So now, who knows? Who knows?
Now, I got to ask you this. You were out there in WCW, and I guess this is, now we're in 2000, and this thing's going down hard. And I mean, there were a lot of stupid things that had happened long before this, but this was certainly one of them. What was your reaction? I mean, I guess, you know, by this time, who knows, but what was your reaction when they asked you to do that? I think it was like he did a cage match with Vince Russo, or what was that deal exactly?
My reaction was, do I get to spear his ass? You know, just more stupidity, man. It was just absolutely ridiculous. That was one of the many things that were just so farcical it wasn't even entertaining for people. The only entertaining part was getting to spear him and have his head hit the back of the post. You know, before I ran out, you know, his helmet got knocked off, and I wasn't going to step foot in that ring unless he had that helmet on, because I didn't want him to sue me for killing him.
Yeah. I you know, if I was, I don't know, that whole thing was weird. I mean, I just remember the big thing for me was the week after, or the Monday in Atlanta at the Georgia Dome. You know, just lost the match to Nash, and they did that thing with Elizabeth, and you know, you were at this police station across the street, and here it's 45 minutes, and you can't go across the street to get back at the end of the show, and just, I'm watching the show, and this is, the company's still on fire at this point, and I'm just going like, they have really lost it this time.
Yeah, they tried to turn it into a soap opera. They went so far away from the typical good versus evil. I mean, the reality is that's all it is. It's good versus evil. And they just strayed so far from that, man.
And then
try to entertain themselves by coming up with more ridiculous stuff.
Then I guess that 1 week when they decided to turn you heel, and then 3 weeks later they forgot to turn you face, but you just were again. And
it's just none of it made sense.
Yeah.
When did you know that the ship hit the iceberg?
Wow. I think when I was sitting at home here and I was rehabbing my arm after going through that limousine, and I was watching the shows and getting feedback from some of my guys, and it was just a horrible scene, man. It was going down quick.
Let's go to Ken in Oklahoma. Ken, you're on with Bill Goldberg. Ken, are you there?
Oh, hello.
Yes, go ahead. You're on with Bill.
Hello, Mr. Goldberg.
How you doing, Ken?
Oh, not too bad. I'm glad to be talking to somebody from my hometown.
Yeah, from Tulsa, huh?
Yes, sir. I grew up on the west side.
Oh, beautiful.
And I was wondering, I missed some of the earlier interviews. I was wondering if you're ever going to come back for a classic match like Hogan or anything.
You never know, man. The question hasn't been asked me in about 10 minutes, but here we go again. But for the fans, I'd love to do it, but it'd have to be in the right circumstance, right situation with the right person. It's not that I want to call my own shots, but I do believe that if I do get back in the ring, it's got to be for the right reason and with the right person. So,
did TNA ever contact you?
What's that?
Did TNA ever contact you?
What, sir?
They did, but I don't think it was a very long conversation.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
All right, thanks.
Okay,
Take care, man. Tell everybody in Tulsa I said hello.
All righty, I will.
You got it, buddy.
All right, we're going to go to John in New Jersey. John, what's going on?
Hey, guys, how you doing?
Doing good.
Yeah, actually, hey, Bill, my question was actually a little bit more about Eddie. Specifically, have any of you all read today's Phil Mushnick column in the New York Post regarding Eddie?
I did.
Yeah.
Brian, did you read it?
Yeah.
Okay, we both did.
What'd you think?
It's the same thing that he's written before, and, I'm not going to say, I don't want to pass judgment on their motives for doing those shows. I think that they were under a very stressful situation, and they did the best that they could. But aside from that, it's the same thing everyone says. I mean, you can't argue with it. There's something amiss. I mean,
Right, I definitely agree. I'm just wondering, this one specific quote, and I'm looking at it right now, is, while Selig, the king of baseball, is hauled before Congress, McMahon, the king of pro wrestling, skips through the cemetery. He surely must think it wonderful that so few people care that the media view his business only as a trendsetter for lowbrow pop culture. And while I agree with everything that they're saying, that something needs to be done, this whole McMahon skipping through the cemetery thing.
It's a figure of speech. I mean, but he did.
Oh yeah.
But he did go to a cemetery, and he's been to too many cemeteries, figuratively, and in this week, literally. The wording. I mean, I know where you're going to say go as far as the wording goes, but he's trying to make this point that Bud Selig is being grilled and everything like that because he's baseball and it's a regular, it's considered a major sport, and wrestling, which is existing in this corner of the world, that these things are happening and no one's being held accountable, and Vince himself is. I don't think that Vince is callous or wants this or anything like this, but if Vince McMahon was running the NBA and the NBA had these kind of issues, he'd be hung up and quartered, if you know what I mean, by not just the media, but by everyone. It could something like what's happened in wrestling here. It could not exist in a real sport other than auto racing, because people have learned to accept death in auto racing, but it couldn't happen without, an outcry like you wouldn't believe. It would never get to this point. And I think that's what, that was Mushnick's point. And he's written this. I think the sad part is that he's written this column not once. You know what I mean? I mean, he's written it many, many times. And, he's probably, I was at the funeral on Thursday and I talked to a couple of guys and, I was just, the whole feeling was, God, I hope we never do this again. And I remember, one guy just looks at me and just goes, we both know better. And it was like, I know. And I think that's the real sad thing. If an NFL player like were to pass away, and there have been, I mean, the 49ers player and everything like that, but it's just not, it's not with the same frequency of the wrestlers. And there's a reason. It's this, Bill talked about it, the schedule, the grind is a killer. You've got to, you got to look that certain way. You've got to get your workout in. You can't eat like junk. And God knows you go out on the road and eating good. It sounds like it's easy, but go try it. You know what I mean? I've never been able to pull that one off. So,
The intent, I totally agree with the intent of the article. It's just the wording there, just bugged me a little. One other thing before I go, on all the tributes on WWE.com, did you all notice that Dusty Rhodes was the only one who even hinted at any impropriety when he said something about the things you have to do to get to the main event in this business? I was shocked they put that on there. I was shocked they even allowed that inference on there. You
know what? I was told, and I have not listened to the Dusty Rhodes thing, but two people told me that I must listen to it, and it was by far the best of all of them. But tell me what he said, because I'm actually very interested.
God, I saw it days ago, but basically, I'm not do my Dusty impression, but basically it was and Eddie Guerrero knew the things you got to do to stay in the main event of this business, but not joking about it, but we've cried enough. He doesn't come right out and say steroids, but he basically
it's not just. It's not.
That's what he insinuates, and they put it up there.
Yeah,
it's very good. Check it out.
Okay, yeah, I know that the other one was. Everybody was trying to soften the load of, and religion's a very touchy subject. They're trying to soften the load of, he's in a better place. And I just remember, because what I was actually told was Dusty was the one to say, I don't know that he's in a better place. And
yeah, that too.
And that's a real hard, that's politically very incorrect to say this week. And he said it. And, but there were people who very much admired the fact that he had the guts to say it. So I give him credit.
Okay. Later, guys.
Okay. Thanks very much. Bill, again, you did the grind for a couple of years there. Just eating on the road, having to look a certain way, pressure. What's your thoughts about all that?
It's like any other professional athlete, like any other actor. You do what you have to do to make a living. You do what you have to do to put yourself in a situation to you're on top. If you strive to be the best at what you're doing, and you come to different conclusions and decisions, and you make decisions based upon what you want in life, man. And everybody's over 21; they can make their own decisions, but then they got to pay the piper at the end of the deal, And it's a hard life, man. It really is. And you know what? Touching on Vince, whether it's Vince, whether it's somebody else, something's got to be done about it. I'm sick and damn tired of losing my buddies. I really am. And it's not are we going to do this again? It's going to be when are we going to do this again? And it's not what's next. It's who's next. Just to take one out of my playbook, you look in your head and you've got people at the tip of your tongue who you think are going to be the next ones in line, and it's a shame that you think like that.
Do you think there's anything that can be done?
Hell yeah, there can be something done. There's no question there can be something done. Look at baseball. Look at what's happening in baseball. Is it the same thing? I don't know.
Would you say drug testing, ease your schedule, both, or both?
I'd say those two things, along with about 1,500 other things.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a very stressful life, man. It is, but it's the life that these guys choose to lead, and it's the life that I chose to lead. And you have to live with those decisions, and you do what you have to do to put yourself in a better position to be better than the next guy.
Now, when you were in WCW, and obviously there were some guys, and that were way out there. I'm not talking about names or anything like that, but I mean, you saw it, you were there. I mean, what do you think was going through their heads, or were they just so? Was the road getting to them, or was the atmosphere getting to them? Because, McMichael, just for one, because he's talked about it publicly.
It's a combination of everything. You look at McMichael. McMichael played football for 1,500 years, man. That guy was the best ass-kicking defensive lineman out there. And, he if he would have retired and never done a physical thing the rest of his life, he still would have been in a lot of pain. To be able to go back out on the road, travel 10 times as much as you used to, look a lot better than you did because you have to, wear your underwear instead of pads in front of people, and have that type of personality and be on top of your game. It entails a long list of things you got to do. And that's that.
How soon before you start buying the mini shoulder pads?
I don't know, man. If I don't get off the phone and go pick my wife up, I may not have a kid. Pretty soon, man. June 8th is the due date, and I just want a healthy baby, man. That's all I want.
Do you have any nephews or anything like that?
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, because I know you have a lot of brothers.
Yep. 3 boys, three nephews, 2 nieces.
Yeah. So hopefully, this one, hopefully this goes great, and that's a life-changing experience.
Yeah, no doubt. That's all I need is another change of my life. It's always good to talk to you guys, man. I greatly appreciate it. With all the crap out there in the wrestling world, it's a pleasure to talk to you guys. It's a lot of fun. Always look forward to it.
Well, thank you very much, Bill, and good luck. And we'll be talking to you soon, and hopefully Hopefully, we'll be seeing you in some type of a movie role that you're. I'm guessing that's what you were about to talk. What you were teasing a few minutes ago.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah. Well, good luck. Good luck with that.
You got it, guys. Take care, man.
Okay. We'll talk to you later. Okay. That was Bill Goldberg, and we will Brian.
Yeah.
So, anyway, we are almost out of time. Any thoughts as far as hold on.
That answer that question.
No. As far as ideas, as far as what needs to be done, because we know something needs to be done.
I have been racking my brain all week, and the problem I'm coming up with is really the same problem that Goldberg said when he answered the question, which was there's about 15 million things, and I just don't know. I really don't even know where to start.
Here's the thing, and just prediction, okay? 2 weeks from now, because we're going to next week, of course, next week is Survivor Series. 2 weeks from now, when we come back, will Vince McMahon have made a statement, or will we just be 2 weeks later and we'll be talking about the same thing without anything from Vince?
I hate to say this, but I think that he won't say anything.
Wow, that's going to be a bad omission on his part. But I'm not.
I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah, I don't have an opinion on it as far as what he will or won't do. But I'm very interested to again in the next 2 weeks, because right now is a little early. But Monday or a week from Monday, something's got to be said. We are totally out of time. Thanks everyone for joining us. We'll be back live in 2 weeks.